King Ibrahim, tall and dignified, presided over the court in the grand palace of Timbuktu with a sense of calm authority. His wisdom was well regarded, and he had earned the love and respect of his people. By his side, Queen Amina, a lady of noble birthline from a very powerful family who once ruled the kingdom, appeared regal but with a hint of discontent beneath her composed exterior. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the palace, Amina retreated to her private chambers. The room was adorned with rich tapestries and fragrant candles. Amina's reflection in the silvered mirror revealed a beauty that belied her inner turmoil. Amina had once been a celebrated figure for her intelligence and charm in the palace, but her inability to bear a son in the past 5 years of her marriage have left her status threatened. But the arrival of concubine Zainab and her son, Prince Suleiman, had only done more harm than good in overshadowing Queen Amina's position. The difference between Amina's former life and her current feelings of inadequacy gnawed at her. Amina's thoughts were interrupted by her loyal servant, Mariama, who entered with a tray of refreshments. Mariama had been with Amina since her early days in the palace and had witnessed the unfair treatments the queen had to face. "Your Majesty," said Mariama, "the evening meal is prepared. Perhaps it will bring you some comfort." "Comfort?" Amina responded. "What comfort is there when my position is being threatened by a child born of a mere concubine?" "You must not let these feelings consume you," Mariama said. "The king values you deeply. His love for you is evident in every decision he makes." Later that night, Amina sat alone by a window, the moonlight casting an eerie glow over her face. The palace was quiet, but her mind was a storm of thoughts, as her jealousy slowly transformed into something darker. Amina's background was one of privilege and education, but the rivalry with Zainab and the favor shown to Prince Suleiman had eroded her sense of security. Her frustration was not only personal, but also tied to her perception of her own legacy and the future of her children if she eventually has any. The next day, the palace was abuzz with preparations for a grand dinner in honor of visiting dignitaries and to celebrate the arrival of Prince Suleiman. Amina played her role as queen with practiced grace, but her thoughts were clouded with schemes. She observed Zainab and Prince Suleiman from a distance, noting how the young prince's laughter filled the room, and the ease with which the king held him only fueled her jealousy. After the dinner, Amina retired to her private study, a secret room filled with ancient texts and artifacts. Behind a shelf is a secret door, one that leads beyond the palace walls and known only by her trusted allies. Here she met with Nuru, an old sage and ally of the queen's family, who happens to be a sorcerer known for his mastery of dark magic. Nuru's presence was both imposing and unsettling, his robes trailing behind him like shadows. "You summoned me?" Nuru asked. "Yes, I did," Queen Amina responded, with desperation and tremble in her voice. "You seek more than what is offered in this world, do you not?" Nuru asked. "Yes," Queen Amina responded. "I want what is rightfully mine, and I will not let a child steal it from me. I've served your family for a very long time. Do you know what it means to summon me?" Nuru said, his voice echoing through the walls of the chamber, sending fear down Queen Amina's spine. But her resolve remained unshaken. She had made up her mind to go down the part where she would rather see the kingdom burn than loose what she believes is her birthright. "To change one's fate, one must be willing to pay a price," Nura said. "Are you prepared to make such a sacrifice?" he asked. "I am willing to do whatever it takes," Queen Amina responded. "What you demand requires going against the original plans of the gods, and as such they will demand for a price at their desired time," Nuru said. Then he performed a dark ritual, his chants filling the room with an otherworldly energy. Amina watched with a mixture of fear and resolve as the sorcerer laid a curse on an artifact, linking its energy with life force of Prince Suleiman, and sealing it with blood he had drawn from himself and Queen Amina. "With this, the prince's fate is altered," Nuru said. "I'll call on you when it's time to give back to the gods," he added. "I understand. Do what you must." Queen Amina responded, holding the glowing artifact in her hand as the light slowly dims away. The following evening, the air in the palace felt charged with anticipation as Queen Amina awaited the results of her dark pact. She paced nervously, her silk gown whispering against the cold stone floor, as an uneasy calm settled over the palace. Prince Suleiman, a once a lively and fiery child, now seemed subdued, and his laughter replaced by a troubling silence. King Ibrahim and Zainab noticed the change, their concern growing with each passing day. Senator Malik, the right hand to the king and his special advisor, visited the king's chamber. In troubled voice he asked, "Is everything all right, your majesty?" King Ibrahim, in a troubled voice but with a sound of stern security, said, "Summon the healers and do it quietly." The weight of their conversation was evident in their solemn expressions. "Something is terribly wrong with Prince Suleiman," King Ibrahim added. With a sense of urgency, the king's hand, Malik left the king's chamber and headed straight for the court, where he sent for the 4 best healers from each corner of Timbuktu kingdom to come assist the royal healer at the king's request. As the days progressed, Prince Suleiman's condition deteriorated further. The palace became filled with anxious whispers and desperate prayers as he lay weak and pale. King Ibrahim, feeling the weight of his son's suffering, clung to hope, but struggled with the mounting evidence of the hands of his enemies at play. He had just brought his child to the palace to secure his reign, and now he's faced with such challenges. Zainab, the king's concubine, stands beside him in tears. She had refused the king's request to come to Timbuktu for years now, noting that life in the palace was not for her, and she wouldn't feel safe since she's a child of a common farmer and had no allies in the palace. 6 years ago, during the Futu War at the land where Mali meets the sea, was Zainab. She was one of several servants taken from the Futu people by King Ibrahim's army as he fought against foreign invaders from the west. During the fierce battle, King Ibrahim was injured. Taking a spear to his lap, he bled profusely. But with several injured, he refused to be treated by the royal doctors, but instead ordered his soldiers who were closer to death's door be treated first. This was one of many ways he won the love and respect of his people. But as he bled, Zainab approached him with hot water and bandages in her hands to treat his wound. "I'll be fine," he said. "Treat the soldiers first." "I'm no doctor, your highness," Zainab replied, "so let me do the cleaning as a servant should." She spoke with determination in her eyes and an aura King Ibrahim couldn't refuse. So she cleaned, stitched, and cared for his wound throughout the duration of the war. And in that period, the two drew closer to each other, fell for one another, and on an airy night with cool breeze and a full bright moon shining across the skies, signifying yet another victory for the kingdom and King Ibrahim's reign. King Ibrahim sat in front of a campfire, and with Zainab beside him, they gazed at one another. With their eyes, they spoke a language that only both understood, and with their bodies, they interacted. Prince Suleiman was conceived, but for 5 years, King Ibrahim has kept this to himself, as he continuously tried to bring Zainab and Suleiman back to Timbuktu, where his palace resides. More days passed and Prince Suleiman's condition only worsened. Reporting to the king, Malik, the king's advisor, suggested that Baba Kofi, an old sage who served the former king and retired to his home after the king's death, be consulted. "There are whispers of dark magic within the palace, my king," said Malik. "It may be prudent to consult Baba Kofi, the old sage. His knowledge of ancient forces might shed light on the mystery of Prince Suleiman's illness." This was, after all, the healers had done their best, but made no sign of progress, nor even determined what was wrong with the prince. Meanwhile, back in the palace, Queen Amina's facade of concern remained flawless. Time to time, she attended to Prince Suleiman with feigned tenderness, her heart a turbulent sea of guilt and satisfaction. She found solace in the deceptive calm she projected to those around her. Queen Amina had dismissed all the maids at night and tended to Prince Suleiman all through the night. By morning, Zainab, the prince's mother, asked, "Your Majesty, how is the prince today?" "He is resting," Queen Amina responded, looking exhausted and talking with a calm voice as one overworked. "We must hope that he regains his strength soon," she added. "It grieves me to see him suffer." Zainab, although wary, appreciated Amina's seemingly genuine concern. She could not have known the truth behind Amina's words. Queen Amina returned to her chamber that morning, her face glowing with joy as she closed the door to her room. Looking at the artifact Nuru had given to her, she caressed it, taking note of how low the light gets as each day passes. Symbolizing Prince Suleiman's days were numbered. As King Ibrahim and Malik arrived at the fringes of Timbuktu, a compound of a modest hut surrounded by ancient trees and sacred groves where Baba Kofi, the old and wise sage, lived. The sage greeted them with a knowing glance. "The prince's ailment is not of this world," Baba Kofi said. As he walks both men into his house, the king and Malik, dressed in common attires and with awe over their faces, looked at each other. "A shadow casted by dark forces rests on the prince," Baba Kofi said. "Such a curse required a great sacrifice, as he belongs to the royal bloodline," he added. "And if not already paid, the repercussion of such a sacrifice has the ability to cause a ripple effect. If so, then this is just the beginning of your problems," he added. "What must be done to save my son? What must be done?" King Ibrahim asked, with pain and desperation all over his face, his voice trembling and his hands shaking. He blames himself for the misfortune that has befallen the prince. "If only I kept my greed in check," he said, tears rolling down his eyes. "The curse is entwined with the threads of fate," Baba Kofi replied. "So to undo it, one must confront the source of the darkness." 2 days later, Baba Kofi arrived in the palace at the request of the king. To find the source of the dark forces, he placed an enchantment all around the bedchamber of Prince Suleiman. So whoever has a hand in the present predicament of the prince will be affected once they come in close proximity of the bedchamber. He had done this in secrecy, and only the king knew about this. After he was through with his enchantment, the king asked, "How will we know who has been affected, and are you sure the enemy is within?" "Yes, I'm your highness," Baba Kofi replied. "Such a curse takes time to come into fruition, so it is masqueraded as though the victim died of natural causes," he said. "So the perpetrator will watch in joy as life slowly drains out of the victim's body, while they enjoy every bit of it," he added. 3 days later, Queen Amina finally had good news. Joy, she rushed to meet the king in the prince's chamber. Little did she know she just ran into a trap set by Baba Kofi. As she entered the chamber, she felt a cold sensation run through her legs upward. For a few seconds she stood still and unable to move. King Ibrahim was the only one in the chamber, and he noticed Queen Amina's reaction. He knew something felt off, but was in disbelief to actually bring himself to suspect the queen. "Are you okay, my queen?" said King Ibrahim. "Yes, I'm my king," Queen Amina replied. "I've great news for you, my king," she added. The healers had just confirmed that after 10 long years of marriage, Queen Amina was finally pregnant. At a difficult time, this was actually great news to the kingdom, but not so great to Zainab and the king personally, whose son lay in bed as he approaches death's door. Queen Amina, in her hidden chamber, summoned Nuru, the dark mage. "I've great news, Nuru," she said. "I know of this," Nuru replied, "for it is the pact with the gods," he added. "They demand your first fruit as sacrifice for the pact you made," he said. Queen Amina stood in disbelief. Tears dripped down her eyes, and with trembling voice, she fell to her knees. "That cannot be," she said. "Why would the gods be this cruel to me?" She asked, "I've waited 10 years for this." She reached into her garment and brought out the artifact that was linked to Prince Suleiman's life. "I beg of you, take back the curse," she said. "I no longer need him dead, so my child need not be dead," she cried out. Nuru remained calm with an icy gaze in his eyes. "That is impossible, my queen," he replied. "What is done," he said, pulling away his garment from her hands and walking away darkness. Life went on as usual, and the healers continued to tend to the prince by day, giving him different kinds of concoction, hoping to get a result. But back at Baba Kofi's place at the far end of Timbuktu, he had sensed the dark presence the queen's visit into the chamber had brought. He hurried his journey to quickly bring this news to King. This was finally a chance to expose the queen and restore the health of the prince. At a private council with the king and his right hand, Senator Malik, Baba Kofi spoke with hesitation in his voice. "I've identified the source of the dark magic that rests on the prince's life," he said. Hearing this, the king's face light up in anticipation, and Senator Malik, eager to take action, spoke. "Give me a name," he said, "and I'll deliver their lives to the king." Knowing the gravity of the accusation he was about to make, Baba Kofi felt hesitant. "It's someone of great importance and value to you, your majesty," he said, "and you should know that I do not call their name lightly. For it's the result of the enchantment placed around the prince's chamber," he added. "Speak freely," King Ibrahim responded. Who dares to conduct dark magic in the palace and against a royal blood? He asked. It's the Queen, Baba Kofi responded. Immediately a wave of silence dawned the room. Neither King Ibrahim nor Senator Malik made a comment. This was a revelation that should never come to light, as it holds the power to break the very peace that holds the kingdom together. In a subtle voice, King Ibrahim told Baba Kofi to leave the palace. What you've said should be heard by no fourth pair of ears, King Ibrahim said. Do whatever you must to help the prince, but this must remain between us, he added, and you may leave. As Senator Malik saw Baba Kofi to the door, he returned to the king eagerly. What must we do, Your Highness? He asked. The queen is from a noble family, one rich in gold, silver, lands, and armies. Her family is the backbone of King Ibrahim's reign and countless triumphs. Confronting the queen with this means accusing her of treason. That in itself directly threatens her life, and in turn, the king's life. King Ibrahim sat in silence, shocked and in disbelief, as tears rolled down his eyes. He has found himself caught in a snare where he has to choose between the life of his son and the survival of the kingdom. Back in her chambers, Queen Amina's nights were sleepless, filled with torment and dread. Her guilt was a constant pressure, even as she tried to maintain her regal composure. She wandered the palace gardens at midnight, her thoughts dark and restless. In the solitude of the garden, she encountered Mariama, who had followed her out of concern. Your Majesty, you seem troubled, Mariama said, with worry in her eyes. Is there something I can do? You would not understand, Queen Amina replied. There are things I have done that cannot be undone. I fear the consequences has come back to haunt me. Perhaps there is still time to seek forgiveness, Mariama responded, adding that the gods are merciful to those who repent. As the days progressed, Prince Suleiman's condition deteriorated further. The palace was filled with anxious whispers and desperate prayers as he lay weak and pale. King Ibrahim, torn between the weight of his son's suffering and his duty to his kingdom, sat in sorrow and pain as he watches Princess Suleiman approach the last days of his life. It has been 8 months since the death of the prince, and almost time for Queen Amina to put to bed. Baba Kofi visited that palace with news of a vision he had. Congratulations, my king, he said. For I see 2 moons above the sky next to your star, he added. The gods have blessed you double for your pain and suffering. The queen carries 2 princes, he added. The king's court was filled cheers and praise. The king smiled and laughed as he immediately ordered a banquet to be held. To his side his queen, smiling also from ear to ear, but beneath that smile was an eerie feeling of worry, for she knew the time for the gods to take their part of the deal is fast approaching. As the banquet drives on, she excused herself. I'm very tired, my king, she said. I shall retire to my chambers. As she left, King Ibrahim stared at her in disgust. But within his heart he felt contentment, because his greatest worry for years was having a successor. Even though Queen Amina killed his son, she is about to bear him 2 sons. For the past months, he has kept a cold distance from the queen and only visited Zainab's chamber. Though it felt weird to Queen Amina, her guilt never let her confront him about it. It was like they both knew what had transpired, but never acknowledged it. As the moon rose above the palace at the peak of the night, Queen Amina snuck out of her bedroom and into her hidden chamber. There she had summoned Nuru, the dark mage. I hear I'm having twins, she said. It's indeed great news, Nuru replied. But I worry, Queen Amina said. Will the gods take one child and leave one to me? She asked. I'm but a servant, Nuru replied, and I do not know the thoughts of the gods, I only heed their instructions. With Nuru's reply, Queen Amina was plagued by nightmares and guilt as the day of her delivery drew near. In the king's chamber, Baba Kofi met with Malik and the king. There Baba Kofi tells the king the remaining part of his vision. Why have you demanded an audience? King Ibrahim asked. I fear there's more to the vision, Baba Kofi replied. More to the vision? King Ibrahim reiterated. Yes, Baba Kofi replied. It's so eerie I dare not say it in court. What more is it? King Ibrahim asked. The 2 moons were blood moons, Baba Kofi replied. You'll loose both sons as they see the light of day, he added. King Ibrahim immediately fell to knees as he wails in sorrow. Senator Malik rushed to raise him up. What have I done to deserve such wrath from the gods? King Ibrahim asked. This is the price for the dark magic that claimed the life of Prince Suleiman, Baba Kofi responded. Filled with anger and rage, King Ibrahim, armed with evidence, approached Queen Amina in her private quarters. The confrontation was inevitable, the atmosphere thick with tension. "Get out," he commanded, sending every maid and midwife out of the queen's chamber. "Amina," he said, "not only did you take the life of my son Suleiman, but you traded his life for that of your two sons," King Ibrahim added, with fire in his eyes. Hearing this, Amina, cornered and desperate, fell to her knees in tears. "Your actions took the lives of my three sons and have put the kingdom at risk," he said. "How could you betray us so deeply? After all the trust we built all these years," he asked. "I did what I thought was necessary to secure our future," she said. "I never meant for it to cause so much suffering." She added, in the heat of the confrontation, Queen Amina went into labor. The king left the bedchamber, and the midwives rushed in to help the queen. The queen gave birth to two stillborn babies, as the gods have demanded of her first issue. Both sons looking disfigured as befitting a sacrifice, and the shock from this took the life of Queen Amina. The tale of Queen Amina treachery became a legend whispered through the ages. It was a story of how envy and betrayal nearly tore apart an empire, the lessons of which served as a somber reminder of the perils of unchecked ambition and uncharted forces.